Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we have a special guest as a speaker. Uh, Dr. B, can you please introduce Jim?
Sure, yeah. Hello, everybody out in Zoom world. This is Dr. Baumanis. I'm the director for the Academy program for X Culture. If you are a university student or if you are a professional, let's say participant, not a student anymore, but if you're a professional participant, this is actually for you, as well as our young people, because Jim Osceola is one of my very good friends. He and I have been friends for years. And we've invited him here today to talk to you guys about maybe a little bit about his culture, because Jimbo is actually Native American. He is one of the few members of the Seminole tribe of Florida. The population, global population, world population, I should say, that's documented, right, Jim, is about 4,000, about 4,000 people left. And as you know, the Seminole tribe of Florida owns the Hard Rock brand, and they also own several casinos in Florida. And they are also the parent company that owns the Hard Rock brand that franchises, or actually, that brands out the Hard Rock brand. So we've asked Jimbo to come today to talk to you guys about a couple of things. What it's like to be a Native American, because I think it's very rare that we actually highlight the history of the Native Americans. They are America's First Nation. We don't recognize that often enough. I know in Canada, it's actually called First Nation. In the United States, we call them Native Americans. Also that, I guess Jimbo will tell you about the history of the Seminoles, how they came together. And then also the cultural differences and what it's like to be Native American living and growing up in that culture in the middle of an American culture. So how do you want to do this, Jimbo? Do you want me to Q&A you, or you want to talk first?
How long do we have?
Oh, that's a problem, because Jimbo and I will talk for hours. We don't have enough. So we only have, our next meeting is at 10 o'clock. So
okay.
about 9:55, we got to close it up. Okay, so give us a brief introduction of who you are and what you've done, and why you have such a huge collection of shoes behind you. And I'm assuming that you are at Hard Rock right now, because I recognize that office.
Okay, let's talk about the shoes. I love shoes. As a kid, things were a little bit tight around the wallet, and we had this much money for shoes. And if we wanted a different quality of shoes, say, we had to go out and I went out and I cut people's grass to earn the difference between what my parents were giving me and what I wanted. So now that I can do unlimited shoes, that's one of the things that I do. I love shoes because it's just something going back, to my childhood, that we didn't have a lot of certain things, and we were never poor. We were very rich in culture. We were rich in family. We were very wealthy in the fact that we had each other and we had our tribe as a group. And I differentiate poor from broke. We were broke as a term. We were never poor, and I'd like to set that out there for everybody to think about, because are you broke or are you poor? That has a big bearing on how you think of yourself and how you go forward.
I remember, I grew up in the Philippines, and I never realized how financially broke we were, and it was everybody, because when you live in a underdeveloped country. I think the Philippines is considered one of the least developed countries. Like you're just surrounded by so much love, and you always have enough, you know. And the other part I think is you didn't know
I
the
agree.
difference between, you know, this quality and that quality. But because you're surrounded by so much love and you're surrounded by abundance of collectivism, which is similar between your tribe and my culture, you don't ever feel poor. You know, I think a lot of our students probably feel the same way, especially those in India. I was in India a few times, and that's what I observed. So Jimbo, let's talk about a little bit about the history of the tribe now. So let me just lay it out for you. Like a lot of our audience right now know that there's such a thing as Native Americans, but possibly they've never really met an authentic 100% pure blood Native American. So, and they don't even know the difference, right? Because they think, oh, Americans are the melting pot. It's everybody going to the United States and, you know, being a part of that culture. But there's this thing called the first, and I always like to call it the First Nations. I know that takes away from Canada because that's what they call it. But, you know, the Native Americans are America's First Nation. So if you could just back us up a few hundred years and tell us a little bit about the history of your tribe.
Well, the history of my tribe goes back to actually a migration that happened probably around the beginning of the 1800s. And with, you know, specifically to my family, part of the family went west from North Florida and ended up in Texas. And all along the way, you know, parts of the group established little family gatherings along the way. But the majority, there was a big group that ended up in Texas, just north of Houston. And my part of the family migrated south, and that's how we ended up in South Florida. We were a lot of different groups of Indians, small groups that had always worked together, fought against each other. That's the way of the world, right? Until we had a common enemy and we all came together. That common enemy happened to be the United States cavalry. So that was the driving force to putting us together as a group with small groups, banding together, like I said, because we had a common enemy. Mm-hmm. My family has been here. Both my parents came from the Everglades, and if you don't know what the Everglades is, at this point, or back then when they were kids, before the improvements and canals came through to drain the water off, the area was covered with anywhere from 6 inches to 2 feet of water year round. So it made a lot of things difficult. Travel was difficult, but that's one of the things that preserved us, is that you know, you couldn't get in, you couldn't get out, you know, you couldn't chase those Indians around because there was no place to go. It was all water. So that was one of the great things that happened with us geographically. And we ended up in a place where nobody wanted a swamp. Nobody wants deserts. So we were fortunate enough to be able to find ways to live. And my mother and father came directly from the Everglades. My father was the 11th of 12 children. So he and his younger sister and grandma came out of the woods, literally, and they came to live in Miami and then Hollywood. His older siblings had come to Miami and took jobs doing whatever they could because they didn't speak English. And my father didn't speak English until he was about 12 years old. My mother went through the same thing. And she tells me stories about, the first house that she ever lived in that had walls and a floor was when she moved, when she married my father and moved into, they moved into a house together in 1961. So it's not that long ago that my people literally came out of the woods. And what that simply means to me is that we are that close to, I hate to say it this way, but who we used to be, because we're on our way, we're all on our way to being something else and someone else. I guess the challenge for all of us is never to forget where we came from, who we are, and how our history with language and different aspects of our culture, or say the food that we eat, makes us who we are and guides us along the way to becoming who we're going to be as the future rolls in, to preserve our peoples, our different cultures. And I have to say at this point that language is very important aspect of that. So that's the kind of the short story of my family.
Well, no, not really. Not really, but I'm going to poke at that in a second.
Okay.
Let me give our audience like just a quick overview of the Everglades. So Everglades is actually a national park. It was deemed the national park here in South Florida in 1947, and it is 1.5 million acres. 1.5 million acres of wetlands. And if you guys ever try to Google it, just put in Everglades National Park and you'll get to see. It is a home. And the first question always is, are there really alligators in the Everglades? Yes, there are. And not only alligators, there are crocodiles too. And yes, they eat people. So don't go in there trying to feed them chicken wings, okay? Because they will take out your arms. It is a national park which is protected, and it is one of the largest national parks in the world. It's a very rare and unique ecosystem, and this is where Jimbo's family came from, which is amazing. So next question. I always ask you this question, and every time you always leave out stuff. So try not to leave out anything, Jimbo. So your last name of Osceola is a very prestigious, historic last name. And for those of you guys who are watching this, there is actually a county called Osceola County, just north of Orlando. Maybe it is in Orlando, actually. Where it is affiliated with the family and the tribe. So can you give us that that story and about when it happened and how that all came to be?
The correct pronunciation of my last name is Ashi Yahola. Ashi means something bitter. It describes a flavor, and Yahola is what a medicine man or a person administering the ashi drink to the warriors before battle. And it just so happens that this drink that was made, it's like a tea, is loaded with caffeine. So of course, having no other stimulants at that time, it hyped everybody up and got the warriors ready for battle. They were ready to go. And the person who was passing out the drink, giving the drink to the warriors, would sing out Yahola, Yahola, Yahola. And that's the origin of my name, Aji Yahola. In our history, we have one warrior, he was never a chief, who became famous because he was captured under a flag of truce by the U.S. cavalry. And the story doesn't begin there. The story begins with him and the rest of our people fighting the U.S. Army to a standstill. And again, you know, geography had a lot to do with that. And he ended up, his story ended up in a prison in South Carolina and imprisoned along the way. And it raised a lot of eyebrows all across the United States because he was captured under a flag of truce.
Mhm.
So that I think, well, I don't think I know. That's where Osceola County comes from. That's where the Osceola Parkway comes from. You know, the naming of those things was because of him and because of the fame and notoriety that was given to him because of his representation of the tribe. There were a lot of chiefs and a lot of people along the way as well. And he, like I said, he was never a chief. He was just someone who stood out on the battlefield.
Well, let
Very
me
proud
tell
of
you what Legends of America says, okay? So again, so Jimbo always misses parts. This is his bloodline. He's great, how many generations were we at? Great, great grandfather, okay? And let me tell you what the Legends of America says about him. And again, Legends of America is a compilation of all of our legendary heroes, right? While Chief Osceola was not a chief by birth, his followers recognized him as such because of his natural leadership abilities. Putting his beliefs into actions, he gathered fellow Seminoles in opposition against forced removal during the Second Seminole War, 1835 to 1842, 7 years he fought, willing to go against both whites and other natives who cooperated with whites. On one occasion, Osceola killed a Seminole chief for setting cattle to white man in Fort King. So he was a little brutal, huh? Well, or he was true to his conviction. And the second part of this is Osceola attended several parleys with American officials, which after which he usually left disgusted and dissatisfied. So a parley is like trying to come up with a truce or a treaty for the tribe. And by the way, this is in Legends of America, if you guys ever want to consider reading about him. But eventually, the tribe became known as the Unconquered. So Osceola was actually born in 1804 in Creektown, and Creektown is near Tallahassee. Correct? Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
The family comes from the Panhandle.
so as being a child growing up as an Osceola 5 generations later, what's that been like for you? What's that journey been like for you?
We look back to all of our ancestors, not just to any single one. And that just goes back to the heart of our culture where we are a group. We are a very, I hate to use this word, but we are a socialist group, meaning the group is together, the group makes decisions together. And in small groups, socialism works fantastic. You know, it really can. My grandmother always told us, if there's a sandwich and there's 4 of you, everybody gets a bite. That's socialism. Everybody shares. But when the group of people gets bigger, we see what can happen with people and some people want more. Some people are not happy with sharing. I mean, that's just the way people are. That's the way history goes. And we're not any different. We're people just like everybody else. but we do look at our ancestors as a whole, and we look at our families as a whole. We look even now to the people who make, we say medicine, and I guess outside of Indian culture, they would be called medicine men or shamans. But we look to them for our history, for where we look to them for our history, because we have to know where we came from so that we know who we are now and are able to figure out where we're going and how we're going to get there as Seminole people.
So
And
in language, in academic language, for those of you guys who are studying the culture part of our research, that's based on collectivism, right? That we protect each other in a collective. And, you know, Jimbo, socialism is really a lot of the social democracies of the European Union behave in that manner. Those are the kinds of government systems that they've put in place. So I don't necessarily think that it's a bad word, but I think for your culture, the word collectivist or collectivism is appropriate, right? But I have a question. What is the
yes,
difference between a shaman and an elder?
a shaman is that's not a word that we use. That's just something that people use, and I may use it from time to time to describe a person who has a certain kind of training. He would be in the secular world, he would be an MD. And there have been pharmaceuticals who have approached our people to discover what we know about making medicine. And you know, at this point, we all understand that the rainforest in South America is so important for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons being that we get a lot of our of the botanicals for the modern medicines that we use.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he would be considered someone who is philosophically has a PhD and medically has is an MD. That's who we would go to for healing, for
homeopathic medicine. Right? Homeopathic
yes.
medicine. Yeah, yeah. You know, that's a
But
big
this, you know, I'd like to throw in at this point that we were using penicillin way before it was ever discovered by anybody else.
right. Well, you know,
So, I mean,
they say,
but you know, again, all of this goes back to natural medicines. You know, a lot of things are synthesized in labs now for the
yeah,
sake of cost. But
or
you know,
profitability, right?
well, I don't want to bring that up, but yes.
Yeah. So
A whole
basically,
different subject.
guys, the lesson here is the first one who gets the product trademarked and protected gets the right to make it.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I think we all learned that from Tesla, right?
You know, that's a very important concept, and that's something that I learned in a marketing class at Florida State is that, you know, the first one to market makes all the money.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
the, you know, R&D is very important, but you know, you can do all the R&D, and then, you know, if you're second to market, you know, you have to wait a certain amount of years before someone else who had the same idea makes all the money. And it, you know, it's not all about the money, but that's what funds research, and that's a lot of what brings us along in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's move on. So we know a little bit about the culture of the tribe. You're collectivist. You didn't describe to us how you respect your elders, and elders in a sense that they are older than them, but it's a title, right? So can you tell us a little bit about what the elders mean to you in your tribe of 4,000 members?
That's a very interesting question because I myself define elders as people who are giving back to the community. And every group of people, every culture has two different types of older people. One is the elders, and like I said, they're giving back to the community. They're giving back to the young people. And then you have grumpy old people who, I mean, and they're everywhere, right? Both, you know, in every city, every family, every group, you've got senior citizens and you've got elders. So at this point, I like to differentiate that, and I'm trying myself to be an elder, not to be a senior citizen. So that's why that's significant to me.
Yeah, I think that's all cultures. I know in Asia, our elders, so what I've observed was that the tribe actually respect their elders in the same way that the Filipinos respect our elders, that we really recognize that they're vessels of knowledge, that they
Yes.
hold wisdom that can only be acquired through years of living. And we recognize also that it's a fleeting time that you have with them. So what we do with our elders when we have them is we take care of them like they are, in a crystal glass bowl, and we really care for them, which is very different to many societies in the world where, a lot of them are in individualistic society, for example, which you guys know the United States is one of the most individualistic societies in the world. Taking care of the elderly is not one of the core values of society. So I think that the Filipino culture and your culture has that in common.
Well,
So,
like I said earlier, we are not that far from living in the woods. My parents lived in the woods.
mhm,
So we're not that far from what we were before we came to the city.
right.
So I didn't speak English until I went to first grade. I did the same thing with my oldest son. Um, it's just important that we 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 learn life, like you said. This is all about life and living, and they're the ones who have lived it. They're the ones who know it.
Right.
So for us to be able to get anywhere, to get to where they are, it's it's the student. In my culture, it's the student's obligation to go to the teacher.
Mhm.
And in my clan, in my family, we've been reprimanded for not holding up our end of the bargain from some of our elders. So it's a big responsibility that the student has to go to the teacher to learn. And I see in my kids that they have Google,
And
but
Wikipedia.
Google, like you said, Leilani, the elders have the wisdom of life because they've lived it.
Mhm,
That's what my kids don't get from Google, is they don't get the wisdom of life. They get facts and figures,
mhm,
and
mhm.
that's it. And it's just a weird situation for me looking at them and seeing them struggle with a lot of things. And of course they don't listen to me. I'm just their dad. So
Yeah. So,
but they
so in
do
that
listen to
sense,
their
it's
grandparents.
common.
They do listen to their grandparents. So that's something that I've learned.
So, I mean, I think for our young people out there, actually for anybody who's watching this, guys, treasure your grandparents, treasure your elders, because in what we're trying to tell you is that time is fleeting, for you to be with them, to learn all of the wisdom that they've acquired all the years that they've lived. And I really think that people who don't understand that miss a lot, because there are treasures in there, in their minds and their hearts, that can only be learned through you, because they're not going to give that wisdom just to anybody. And the second thing is that it improves your life so tremendously once you start to, practice all of that wisdom that they've acquired. Simple things. I want to bring you back a little bit, because again, this is a story that we're hopefully going to end at the right space. And I know that you are not really allowed to give us a lot of information about the Hard Rock brand, but because we are a business organization, that we're going to bring you up to the point where the acquisition happened. But I want to back you up a little bit to the settlement of Fort Lauderdale. You guys know that I actually live in Fort Lauderdale, and I was actually doing a tour once of one of the historic homes in Fort Lauderdale, and I overheard the tour guide. Telling a story to a lot of visitors in South Florida about the Seminole tribe story. And of course, like, I've lived here for over 20, I think I've lived here 26 years now. And this was probably a few years back. So I went in there just, I had an evening off, and I was with my girlfriends, and we just wanted to do a nice little tour, kind of like a staycation. And as we were listening to the tour guide, again, I've lived here the last quarter years of my life, 50% of my life. So I knew most of the stuff, but the way that she said it was so interesting. And when the tourist said, "Oh yeah, the Seminole tribe of Florida live here, and they're the reason why Fort Lauderdale was actually created," that Fort Lauderdale New River Settlement was named after a General Lauderdale, who was actually commissioned to come down here to kill the Seminole tribe, or whatever was left of the tribe, in one of the wars. And that the United States was actually trying to push them as far back into the Everglades as they could, or basically just get rid of them. So that's the original story of the creation of Fort Lauderdale. Which, can you embellish on that a little bit?
Well, the whole thing with the Seminole Wars was all along the eastern part of the country and into the Midwest. At one time, the whole idea was to take all of the eastern tribes and put them in Indian territory, which is what Oklahoma is now, the state of Oklahoma. And of course, there's a lot of history written about what happened along the plains to the Plains Indians. But that's what this is all about, is taking all of the Indians out of their homeland. And that's strategic militarily speaking, because if you take us out of what we're familiar with, it's a little more difficult for us to fight, because we're not familiar with the ground, with the area. Mm-hmm. So going back to Fort Lauderdale, and what you said is the whole intent of the U.S. government at one time, and it was verbalized, it was public, that was to remove all of the Indians or to kill them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In the second, just to take all the Indians away from the eastern part of the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what was the number? I believe it was something like 200 by the time the Second Seminole War was over. Do you remember what was the number of how many members of the tribe you had left?
I've heard numbers 250 up to 400, mm-hmm. But it was just a very small group that survived and stayed here. A lot of our people were removed and taken to Oklahoma. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. To Indian Nation territories.
Yes.
Right. So, and you guys, that was 1840s, right? So, and then Fort Lauderdale actually became abandoned until the late 1890s. And it wasn't until then. And when I was listening to the woman telling the story, she says, yeah, Mr. Stranahan, the house that I was touring that day, 1890s, built this house because his wife was educating the children of the Seminole tribe. And then the cute thing that she said was, you know, Seminole tribe, the people who own the Guitar Hotel down the street, those people. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly right, that they own the Guitar Hotel down the street. So, so let's fast you forward, you know, from 1890s to, I believe it was 2006. Let me look back in my my story where the acquisition of the Hard Rock brand happened. So, and it is in the New York Times, Jimbo. So this is public information. You may talk about it. So tell us about how that acquisition happened.
Well, let me tell you, going back to 1956 and 1957, it wasn't the Seminole Tribe of Florida yet. We were in the process of ratifying a constitution to create a government to be able to communicate with the government of the United States. And this goes, to me, in my opinion, from where I'm sitting and the way I see our tribal history is, when they were asked by Congress, what is it that you need? They said, we need 25 years to educate our children. And that request, it wasn't a request for money. It wasn't a request for anything that was not going to last. They asked for time to educate their children to be able to work and live in the society of the United States of America. And I'm probably the end of that group, but the guys that came before me who did go to college, who did get an education, are actually the ones that had a big hand in developing Indian gaming, which led to the purchase of the Hard Rock International brand by the Seminole Tribe of Florida. So that's kind of the long and short of that.
Oh,
but,
I skipped that part, didn't I? Which
well, that's not something that's out there. That's something from my perspective. And there's a lot more to it, of course.
Yeah.
A lot of intricacies that we won't talk about. It is gaming, and gaming is gambling. So, we'll leave that right there. But going forward, we were a big part of the revenue of Hard Rock International.
Mm-hmm.
We actually started our relationship with Hard Rock International with a hotel in Managua, Nicaragua. Mm-hmm. And that didn't make it because of the market. And because probably the franchise fees had a lot to do with it. So the tribe had a hotel business in Managua for a while, and it turned into a successful operation. But that was actually the first business that the Seminole Tribe and Hard Rock did, and that was under our chairman, James E. Billy, who was a very dynamic person, huge personality.
Yeah. I see him in this New York Times. I don't know if I can clip it and put it in the chat, but it's super cool because he's in front of the Hard Rock brand and in his Seminole Tribe costume, and he's putting his hand out, and I'm like, wow.
He's a huge story, and he's got a lot to do with this, as well as a lot of the administrators at the time, because they were basically all the same age, and they came from the education process that started in 1958. Mm-hmm. And going forward, we because of Seminole Gaming and the Hard Rock casinos in Florida are Seminole Gaming facilities. They're not Hard Rock facilities. They're branded Hard Rock as a means of marketing, but they are operated by me and my team members at Seminole Gaming. And those operations were such a huge part of the revenue stream for Hard Rock International. We were somewhere between 30 and 35% of their annual revenue. So that I dare say that had a big bearing on who was gonna be the new owner of that franchise when it came up for sale, or that company when it came up for sale. So
well, let me tell you what the New York Times, this is dated December 8th, 2006, and this is the day after the acquisition, right? The Seminole Tribe of Florida yesterday had acquired Hard Rock International, the music-themed chain of restaurants, hotels, and casinos from the Rank Group of Britain for $965 million, one of the largest purchases ever by an American Indian tribe. The sale signals the exit of Rank from the restaurant industry as it seeks to focus on its casino operation amidst disappointing earnings. So you guys, and I remember you complaining to me one time that we paid too much for that brand.
Yeah, I believe
you
we
said
did.
that about 5 times.
I believe we did, simply for the fact that we should have turned the screws and gotten it for a lot less. It was a great purchase, though. It was a great, I'm never happy. So, I get that from my mother.
So now I have here a student, Kevin from Bali, says that we have one Hard Rock hotel in Bali. So how does that work? Is that a branded Hard Rock hotel, or is it just a branded hotel, or is it a franchise, or do you know, Jimbo?
It is branded. There are franchise territories and there are company-owned territories. Paris is a company territory. Bucharest, Romania is a franchise territory. So that's something that was distinguished before we ever got involved. But it's something that has gone on. And you said something that needs to be pointed out, is that Hard Rock was a restaurant company, and it still is. When people think about Hard Rock, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is Hard Rock Cafe. They don't say the Hard Rock Casino, even though the Hard Rock Cafe is inside the Hard Rock Casino. My friends all call it the Hard Rock Cafe because that's where it came from. That's what makes this brand famous.
Yeah.
That t-shirt, that white t-shirt, that white plain t-shirt that at one time everybody in the world was wearing. And that's
it has the logo. Yeah. Yeah, they brand it for location, right?
Is with the location on it.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to me how people hold the Hard Rock Cafe in so close to their hearts. I mean, it's such amazing brand loyalty to me. It's crazy. I'm very thankful for it, and we cultivate that still. But a restaurant company works on very small margins. That's just the way restaurants work. So after our acquisition, we started expanding the brand into hotels and looking for opportunities for casinos and casino development, because the tribe is the owner of the best gaming operation on the planet. And that's bar none.
Yeah. And that is validated by data, guys. That's data driven. That's not just Jimbo saying we're the best. They actually have numbers that follow that. I do, because we're running out of time, and there are 2 things that I want to really address. Okay. I remember once, you guys, whenever you have an opportunity to come down to Fort Lauderdale, go and visit the Guitar Hotel because it really is amazing. But I remember the first time that you brought me to Hard Rock Cafe in the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. And we sat down and we started. Now, I've been eating Hard Rock since, God, 80s, right? I'm dating myself. Oh my God. But anyway, since the 80s. And then I remember when I went with you that one time, you're like, Leilani, I want to take you to the cafe because we just revamped the menu. And I know that that was your team that did that. And I told you I could tell significantly the quality and the improvement of the food. So tell us about how you guys did that.
I have to say at this point that our CEO, and I'm gonna say his name, Mr. Jim Allen, is a perfectionist. And just a little side story, when that menu change happened, when the tribe took over the operation and was able to, Mr. Allen walked in and said, you know, if we're gonna have mashed potatoes, we're gonna peel potatoes. No more instant, no more instant anything. So he's a huge part of, and his standards are a huge part of getting that operation to where it is, and changing that menu to what it should be for what the product costs. It needs to be the best product out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the long and short of it. And sitting in the original cafe in London with the manager one time, this was a long time ago. One of the things that he said to me is, I have to make sure that this burger is the best. And he, you know, used a couple of words. He said, it's the best burger that you have ever had in your life. At that point, you know, with the exchange rate between the pound and the dollar, I think it turned and this has been a long time. That burger with the exchange rate was about $25 in US currency. So I was like, wow, you know, and you know, not only are the fans of the brand dedicated, but the people who work there are amazing. You know, to me, I can't buy into a lot of things, but the people who work for Hard Rock have bought into it totally, and it's a great company. It really, really is. What it stands for, the way it started out, you know, the love all, serve all, take time to be kind, all of that is amazing. I mean, it's just an amazing, and it's not just something that the company says, they live it. And I say they because I'm not part of Hard Rock International. God bless them. I'm part of Seminole Gaming. I work for Seminole Gaming, and we operate casinos. But man, oh man, those people are so dedicated. They love the brand, and they're so protective of it. I love them all.
Yeah. I miss going to the Hard Rock because, you know, I can't bring myself to go there unless I'm with you, right? You know, so this is the thing. And since you haven't taken me there in a long time, I haven't had anything from
Okay, we'll go.
So now we don't have time to continue on with this interview. And I hope that you guys really learned a lot. I have one student here who asked, I'm hoping that this is a joke. Do they burn paper and drink it to quickly memorize stuff? I'm gonna say that was a joke. That's not something that you know, the mystery and the mysticism of the tribe really influence our young minds very uniquely and special, right? But no, they don't do that. So any parting words for us, Jimbo, our young people, our professionals, our college students who might be watching this?
Coming from a cultural base, remember who you are. It will help you move forward. If you have elders in your family, give them the reference that they deserve, the reverence that they deserve, and just, you know, as they say at the Hard Rock, love all, serve all, take time to be kind. You know, that's those are good words to live by. They really, really are. Very simple, but they're not controversial. There's nothing controversial about that. So if there's anything that I can ever help you with, I'm available by email. And if you have any questions, email them to me. You mentioned the U.S. Department of Commerce. I worked with the U.S. Department of Commerce for 5 years and learned a lot. And if I can help students with anything, with projects, with actual development of a product that they might be willing, that want to take to market, that's, I'm all about manufacturing. So if I can help in any way, I certainly will.
We're very grateful for you to be a part of our our X-Culture family, and we're very grateful that you've been involved with us for, gosh, a long time now, right? Jim Osceola and the Hard Rock, the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino of Hollywood was actually our challenge company in the first Global X-Culture Symposium in 2017. And they brought down vice presidents and directors of programs. And I understand that a lot of those initiatives that we found and developed around that time is now being put into practice. So we're very, very grateful from X-Culture to you guys in being a part of our X-Culture family. So that's all we've got time for now. Anything else, Raphael? And Louise is I didn't even give her a minute to say hello, but Louise is our program coordinator for this event. And Louise is actually a law student in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And also, you know that Raphael is in Brazil. So super cool that we have these kinds of people. Do you guys have any parting words or last questions?
I just want to thank you, Jim, to join us here today. And I really love this kind of interaction, this like an interview. And I think maybe Jim can join us again another time, because I really love the stories and now the sharing experience that he told us. So yeah, thank you very much, Jim.
Okay.
It's my pleasure. Anytime you can, I will. My pleasure.
Peace and love to you and to everybody. And for those of our students who are in Ukraine, we are thinking of you. We are praying for you. And we are praying for a very soon ending of the war. I just want to say that because, Jimbo, we have 20 students in Ukraine right now. And then our executive assistant to the president, Julia, and her husband, who is our IT manager, are both in harm's way in Ukraine. So we're praying for all of you guys. Also, Yevgeny Frankiv, who was our former Raphael, is also a soldier for the military now. So we're praying for you. We're thinking about you, and we can't wait for this nightmare to end for you. So peace and love, everybody.
Thank you, guys. See you next weekend. Bye-bye.